Bible reading is from Genesis chapter 6, and verses 5 to 22. And it can be found on the New Bibles, the leather cover, page 2, and the paperback version, big chunky one, on page 3. First book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 6, beginning at verse 5. Part of the story of the flood of Noah. The Lord saw how bad the sins of everyone on earth had become. They only thought about evil things. The Lord was very sad that he had made human beings on the earth. His heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I created human beings, but I will wipe them out. I will also destroy the animals, the birds in the sky, and the creatures that move along the ground. I'm very sad that I have made human beings. But the Lord was very pleased with Noah. Here is the story of Noah's family life. Noah was a godly man. He was without blame among the people of his time. He walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons. Their names were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth was very sinful in God's eyes. It was full of people who did mean and harmful things. God saw how sinful the earth had become. All its people were living very sinful lives. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to everyone. They have filled the earth with their harmful acts. I'm certainly going to destroy them and the earth. So, make yourself an ark out of cypress wood. Make rooms in it. Cover it with tar inside and out. Here is how I want you to build it. The ark has to be 450 feet long. It has to be 75 feet wide and 45 feet high. Make a roof for it. Leave below the roof an opening all the way around that is 1.5 feet high. Put a door on one side of the ark. Make lower, middle and upper decks. I am going to bring a flood on the earth. I will destroy all earth life under the sky. It will destroy every living creature that breathes. Everything on earth will die. But I will make my covenant with you. You will go into the ark. Your sons and your wife and your sons' wives will enter it with you. Bring a male and a female of every living thing into the ark. They will be kept alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird will come to you. 2 of every kind of animal will also come to you. And so will 2 of every kind of creature that moves along the ground. All of them will be kept alive with you. Take every kind of food that you will need. Store it away as food for you and them. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Hear the word of the Lord.
The readings from the New Testament, and there are 3 of them today, which refer to the Genesis passage. The first one is Matthew chapter 24, starting at verse 35, and you can see it there on the screen. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. But no one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven know. The Son does not know, only the Father knows. Remember how it was in the days of Noah. It will be the same when the Son of Man comes. In the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking. They were getting married. They were giving their daughters to be married. They did all those things right up to the day Noah entered the ark. They knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be when the Son of Man comes. 2 men will be in a field. One will be taken and the other left. 2 men will be grinding with a handmill. One will be taken and the other left. So keep watch. You do not know on what day your Lord will come. And the second reading is from Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7. Noah had faith, so he built an ark to save his family. He built it because of his great respect for God. God had warned him about things that could not yet be seen. Because of his faith, Noah showed the world that it was guilty. Because of his faith, he was considered right with God. And finally, in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18, we read, Christ also suffered once for sins. The one who did what is right suffered for those who don't do right. He suffered to bring you to God. His body was put to death, but the Holy Spirit brought him back to life. After that, Christ went and made an announcement to the spirits in prison. Long ago, these spirits did not obey. That was when God was patient while Noah was building the ark. And only a few people went into the ark. In fact, there were only 8. Those 8 people were saved through water. The water of the flood is a picture. It is a picture of the baptism that now saves you too. This baptism has nothing to do with removing dirt from your body. Instead, it promises God that you will keep a clean sense of right and wrong. This baptism saves you by the same power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead. He has gone into heaven. He is at God's right hand. Angels, authorities and powers are under his control. Hear the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Well, good morning. You might like to keep your Bibles open to Genesis chapter 6. We're going to be doing a bit of a lightning tour through Genesis chapters 6 to 9 this morning. The flood account's quite long, but of course I'm sure you don't want a sermon that's 5 times longer than usual because I'm looking at 5 chapters all at once. So we're going to do a bit about the lightning tour. But this is one of the best known stories of the Bible. It's right up there with the Christmas story, with the Good Samaritan. That image of Noah and an ark and some animals. Many people who know very little about God know that image. And we all like a story with a good hero. So who or what is the hero of this story? Is Noah the hero? The man who built that ark without a power tool in sight? Is the ark the hero? That vessel that carried the people safely through the storm? Is the dove the hero, the dove that flew back with an olive branch in its beak, with that evidence that the flood was past? Is the rainbow the hero, that sign of God's promise that appears again and again for us? Well, actually, none of them are the hero of the story. God is the hero of this story. And the creation, God is the hero of the story. Not Adam or Eve or the creation itself. And here in the flood, God is the hero of the story. Noah's just a man. He's an impressive man, to be sure, but he's just a man. In Noah's day, it seemed like he was the only good man to be found on the face of the earth. Humans spread across the earth, but they spread their sin across the earth with them. Each generation seemed to get worse than the one before it. People were even boasting about murder. In Genesis 2:24, God had said, "A man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife. The two become one." Yet by Genesis 5:23, we hear that men are taking more than one wife into their home. We hear of a man called Lamech. He took 2 wives and he said to them, "Ada and Zillah, listen to me. You wives of Lamech, hear my words. I killed a man because he wounded me. I killed a man because he hurt me. So sin is spiraling out of control in human society. Now, do you remember the commands God gave at creation? One of them was fill the earth. And here in chapter 6, verse 13, God says, I'm going to put an end to everyone. They have filled the earth with their harmful acts. Instead of filling the earth to rule it, to care for it, to steward the earth on God's behalf, they were filling it with their sin and their violence. So humanity has destroyed what God had made good. And what's God's reaction to this? We often think of God as being angry with sin. But nowhere in this passage of the Noah account does it say God was angry. In fact, it uses a very different emotion. And I wonder if you noticed it in our reading. Genesis 6, verse 6. The Lord was very sad that he had made human beings on earth. God was sad. Sin causes God a deep sadness. God wanted to turn back, to undo this creation, to wipe it clean and start again. And yet he still loved his creation. And he was sad. Now God knew that no amount of water could wash the sin from the earth. God knew that water couldn't wash it away, but we didn't. Humanity, we like to think we can fix our problem ourselves, that we can be good enough, we can build enough peace, we can work together enough. With each of us, like to delude ourselves sometimes that we can set aside our own selfishness. God knew that humanity couldn't fix this problem. He knew water couldn't fix this problem. But he had a plan, a master plan, to fix the problem of the fall. And one step in that plan was to show us how it couldn't be done. It couldn't be done by washing the earth clean. It couldn't be done by getting rid of all the bad people and keeping the ones who just seemed really good. We'll just have the good people. So here is Noah. He's told to build an ark. He's told the animals will come and there'll be a fresh start for the world. And this is a good spot to pause and ask, was it really every kind of animal from across the face of the whole globe? Did possums, kangaroos, yabbies, cockatoos make it all the way to the Middle East to climb on that ark and make it back again after the flood? Well, just like with Genesis 1 to 3, Christians have some different perspectives on this. Some Christians believe, yes, the flood waters covered literally the entire globe, even the peak of Everest was covered. God provided the water. He's created all the water that is. He can provide enough water. He can help those animals get to and from the Middle East. And that's how we should read this account. Other Christians believe that the flood was more as far as the eye could see. That from Noah's perspective, the flood covered everything. That Noah himself could see no land, and that many local animals might have come to him, so that when he came out of the ark, there were animals there to be farmed and hunted and to fill that area of the land again. Other Christians think that maybe the story is not history, but more like a parable. But it's a very long story. Genesis 6, 7, 8, and 9. God's taken a lot of time over this story. The creation is over in 2 chapters, the fall in 1 chapter. We cover all these generations in just a few more chapters. There's something about this story that God has slowed down the storytelling. He does want us to know about these events. Jesus talks about Noah. We heard that in our Matthew reading. The writer of the letter to the Hebrews includes Noah among the greatest heroes of the faith, the greatest examples of faith that we have. And Peter talks about Noah in that reading from his letter. However we understand the exact historical details, God wants us to know this story and to take it to heart and to think carefully important. And the references in the New Testament show that the flood is really important still for Christians today. It's important for us in knowing how do we live as Christians, how do we understand who we are and who God is. So Noah's told, build this ark, build this massive boat, and the animals will come. That ark, I actually measured up out there just for an exercise for the children. And the fence line that goes from the rectory to the church is actually narrower than the ark. It's about 2 metres wider than that. And if the ark sat in the grass outside, it wouldn't actually fit from the road to our fence. It was longer than that. You'd have to knock down the fence into the SDAs to actually fit the ark, a boat with those biblical dimensions, out there in that space. So it was a massive thing that Noah was given, those plans Noah was given. And at the beginning of chapter 7, God says something really interesting to Noah about how many animals he had to take into the ark. Here's a meme that I quite like. Good luck reading those lines. It is amazing how many children's story pictures of Noah's ark put manes on both lions, because lions have manes, right? Only the male lions have manes. But if you go and look at children's pictures of the ark, you often see that. But for some animals, Noah needed more than 2, more than a male and a female. For example, when Noah came out of the ark, he built an altar and he sacrificed a sheep on it. Now, if it only had 2 sheep, that would have been a problem. And so you'll notice in chapter 7, God says to take 7 pairs of every clean animal and 7 pairs of every bird. Now, clean meant an animal that you could eat or an animal that you could sacrifice to God. So clean animals were things like sheep, goats, cows, deer. Unclean animals were the ones they couldn't eat. Pigs and camels were some of the animals that they considered unclean. So by taking 7 pairs of the clean animals, it meant that when they used some for food or for sacrifices, there was still enough left to keep breeding. It means Noah and his family had a supply of farming animals ready when they came out of the ark. They had some deer that could go running off into the bushes that they could go hunting for. So 14 of the birds are clean animals and 2 of the animals that they would just leave alone. So Noah and his family worked to build this ark, made with only hand tools and the kind of things that they had. We place Abraham to around 2000 BC, 4,000 years ago. Noah, we can't place in any historical time. It's sort of too far back. But you're talking more than 4,000 years ago, with the technology available then. Noah's given this job. Build this ark. Build it bigger than our lawn out there. And there's something really surprising that's completely missing from the ark. The ark has no rudder. It has no steering. It has no sail. You see, preserving Noah and the people and the animals was God's job. Noah was not trying to be an agent in his own salvation here. He followed God's instructions to build the boat. But God would steer the boat. God would take it where it needed to go. In fact, on the day they entered the ark, it was God who shut the door. That's chapter 7, verse 16. The Lord shut them in. Noah had to completely trust that God was in control. This was God's plan, and he was simply obedient. Now, the floodwaters are described as terrifying. Do you remember the ancient Hebrew cosmology we looked at when we looked at creation? They believed the sky was a solid dome, and that the sky was holding back all these waters that were above them. They believed the earth floated on a wild ocean, and that wells, when they dug for water, a well was going down into that ocean. And all the waters were chaos, The waters were scary. People in the Middle East at that time, they didn't go boating. They weren't seafarers. The water was scary. They honestly thought if they went sailing off in a boat, they would hit the edge of the earth and sink into the water in chaos. And so chapter 7 verse 11 says, Noah was 600 years old. It was the 17th day of the second month of the year. On that day, all the springs at the bottom of the oceans burst open. God opened the windows of the sky and rain fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. To an ancient reader, this is truly terrifying. The idea that this dome God had put in the sky to hold the waters back failed. The trapdoors were flying open. That the earth that was floating on these waters was somehow being overwhelmed by the waters rushing up. It's the most terrifying picture an ancient mind could imagine. And so you can see how this story is really written on a way to make a lot of sense to them. They believed that there was an endless supply of waters below and above the earth. It was God's job to open the trapdoors, God's job to close the trapdoors. And on this day, God opened the windows of the sky. The flood was not a natural disaster. This account does not call it a natural disaster. God caused it to happen. It was intentional. As horrific as it seems, it was part of the plan. It was part of the plan to fix the problem of the flood. And then we start to see there's a whole lot of numbers in this story. How old Noah was, how long it took to build the ark. I want to just look at a few of those numbers. Firstly, how many days were they on the ark before it started to rain? Well, if you look at chapter 7, verse 4, it was 7 days. How many days did it rain for? Chapter 7, verse 17 tells us it rained for 40 days. How many days did it take for the waters to start going down? Verse 24, 150 days. How many days after hitting land did Noah send out the birds? 40 days. How many days later did he send the second dove? 7 days. 7, 40, 150, 47. This pattern and other patterns, if you dig into some of the other numbers, suggest that the author is interested in the symbolism of numbers. This was common in the ancient world, and it means that sometimes they might not be using numbers exactly the same way that we do. There's another interesting trivia fact though. Does anyone know who the oldest person in the Bible is? The person in the Bible who's, other than like Jesus or Elijah who kind of went to heaven while still alive, of the people in the Bible who died, does anyone know the name of the oldest? Yes? Methuselah. Alright, so Methuselah, according to Genesis 5 verse 27, lived to be 969 years old. Now if you trace the genealogy in chapter 5, you'll discover Methuselah was 187 when his son Lamech was born, and therefore he was 369 when Noah was born. That's just from the genealogy in Genesis chapter 5. Now, how old was Noah when the flood came? Chapter 7, verse 6. Noah was 600 years old. So how old was Methuselah when the flood came? 969. So Methuselah, Noah's grandfather, died in the flood. Lamech, Noah's father, is said to have died 5 years before. And this is a small detail. The text doesn't go out of its way to point that out to us. But it shows us these numbers are meaningful. It shows us there's thought in these numbers. There's a logic to these numbers. They're not random ages. Because indeed no one, if the flood account is telling an accurate account of what happened in the Middle East at that time, could have stayed alive after the flood. So Noah's own grandfather, presumably, didn't believe and didn't climb on the ark. So even though we wonder sometimes exactly how this this story is using numbers. We know that numbers are meaningful and important.
Well, unfortunately, we had a slight problem with our live stream feed, so we're doing a separate take as we finish off our message this morning. So the journey that Noah went on is really clear. The writer to the letter of the Hebrews summarised it well. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7. Noah had faith, so he built an ark to save his family. He built it because of his great respect for God. God had warned him about things that could not yet be seen. Because of his faith, Noah showed the world that it was guilty. Because of his faith, he was considered right with God. Now, after the floodwaters start to go down, Noah wonders when he will leave the ark. Remember, this is God's job to decide, not Noah's. Noah could not steer the ark. God had shut the door to the ark. But Noah and his family could look outside. There was an opening below the roof all the way around the ark. And they could see the sunshine. They could feel that the boat had struck land. And so Noah sent out a raven, a bird, and it came back. And he sent out a dove, and it came back. What joy there must have been to see that dove coming back with a sprig of olive in its beak. The world was becoming green again. And so no wonder the dove with the sprig of olive in its beak became a symbol of peace, even today. In chapter 8, verse 15, God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark. Bring your wife and your sons and their wives with you. Bring out every kind of living thing that's with you. Bring the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground. Then they can multiply on the earth. They can have little ones, and the number of them can increase." Does that sound familiar at all? It's a bit like a recreation moment or a resetting of creation. Out into this clean, fresh world come the humans and animals. God speaks to them and he tells them to fill the earth. Well, what's the first thing Noah does? I wonder what you might have wanted to do first thing if you had been on the ark. Here in Darwin, we escaped the strict lockdown that's been happening in many other places around the world because of the coronavirus. But we did have a taste of lockdown here. And Noah and the animals were in lockdown on that ark for about a year. What is the first thing that Noah does? Chapter 8, verse 20. Noah built an altar to honour the Lord. Noah knew who the hero of the story is. He's not going to forget it. Noah first builds an altar to honour God. He makes a sacrifice, he prays and he worships. Later in our service, we're going to sing the song, "Come Thou Fount." In the second verse, it says, "Here I raise my Ebenezer." Last time we sang that song, I told the story of the Israelites raising a stone and calling it Ebenezer. There'd been great trouble, the Israelites' enemies were coming against them, they'd prayed to God, and God had won an amazing victory for them over their enemies. And so they raised this great big stone, stuck it up there, and they called it Ebenezer, which means that God is their help. It was a stone of remembrance that God had helped them. Every time they saw that stone, they would remember to thank God. Now Noah does a similar thing as he builds his altar. It can be helpful for us too to have reminders of the great things God has done and is doing in our lives. Perhaps by keeping a diary or a journal where we write down our prayers and record the things we see God doing. Perhaps by having a significant verse displayed somewhere in your home or somewhere where you see it regularly. When I arrived in Darwin, I planted a pawpaw tree in the rectory garden. It was just a little seedling about this big when I planted it. I had to put lots of stakes around it to make sure that it didn't get plucked up like a weed. And it will take a long time for that pawpaw to grow large enough to bear fruit. But for me, it was a statement of faith that I've been called here and will still be here to enjoy the fruit of that pawpaw tree. It's a bit like an Ebenezer.
Well, Noah builds this altar and he sacrifices and he gives thanks to God. And as Noah does this, God is pleased. Now, God knows this fresh, clean world won't last. In fact, the very first sin we hear of after this account is Noah getting drunk and the whole family conflict and drama, and it all goes to water very quickly. So that wasn't a surprise to God. God knows the fresh, clean world won't last, and He knows that no water can wash the sin from the human heart. But in verse 21, God says, I will never put a curse on the ground again because of human beings. I will not do it, even though their hearts are always directed toward evil. Their thoughts are evil from the time they are young, but I will never destroy all living things again as I've just done. Even though God knows that humanity will continue to sin, He makes a covenant, a promise with Noah and all the earth, that as long as the earth lasts, there will always be a time to plant and a time to gather the crops. As long as the earth lasts, there will always be cold and heat. There will always be summer and winter, day and night. In chapter 9, God also says, have children, so there are many of you. Fill the earth. All the land animals will be afraid of you. All the birds of the sky will be afraid of you. Every creature that moves along the ground will be afraid of you. So will every fish in the seas. Every living thing is put under your control. This recreation or resetting of creation continues as God restates that command to fill the earth, to look after the earth, to rule the earth. God has promised not to destroy it, and so humanity still has the job that was originally given to us to care for the earth. And now we come to my favourite part of the flood story. God is making this covenant, this sincere promise, and He gives a sign of the covenant. He places His bow in the sky. Now, nowhere in the text does it suggest that rainbows had never appeared on earth before. I don't think that's what it's saying at all. Somehow this was the first rainbow ever. The point is not that the rainbow is new. The point is that God is giving a specific meaning to the rainbow. That a rainbow appeared at the exact moment when God's making His promise. And God says that rainbow, that now has a special meaning. Like the sun burns in the sky, but it also has a meaning for setting day and night. And the stars in the sky, God gave them the special meaning of telling the days and the seasons and the years. So now the rainbow has a special meaning, a reminder of His covenant. And so when we talk about raising an Ebenezer, this is like God's turn to do that. God has a physical reminder of His promise, of His interaction with humanity at this point in time. Another interesting thing is the Hebrew text doesn't specifically say a rainbow. You see, in Hebrew, the word for a rainbow and the word for bow, as in hunter's bow and arrow, are the same word. And so the shape of a rainbow is similar to the shape of a hunter's bow. God says to Noah in verse 12, here is the sign of the covenant I'm making. I've put my bow in the clouds. God knows sin is still a problem. And as I said, in the second half of chapter 9, Noah gets drunk and there's this huge conflict in his family and the cycle of sin starts again. But God's promised not to use a flood to destroy the earth. He's not going to destroy the earth as a way of getting rid of this sin. So how can God fix the problem of the fall? If He can't destroy the earth and this sin is just stuck inside the human heart, how's God going to fix it? Noah didn't know. Noah was left with a mystery, but he had to believe in faith there would be a way. But God knew the way. God knew the plan. And we know the plan. This is my favourite part of the story. If the earth deserves God's judgment for our sin, where should that bow and arrow be pointing? It should be pointing down. It should be pointing towards the earth. But God has hung His bow in the sky. Where is that bow pointing? It's pointing up to the heavens. God has hung up his bow of judgment. He's withholding the judgment that the earth deserves. And it's pointing right at himself. Because Jesus was the one who would come and actually take our punishment. It was Jesus' blood that would finally be able to wash sin from the human heart. Jesus' death would be sufficient. We can never do it in our own strength. It can never be washed away. And so God hung the bow of his judgment in the sky and made a plan. Noah didn't know the plan, but God knew, and we know. And we must never take that lightly. It's easy at times to see the punishment or the judgment of God as harsh or hard. Can't God just forget about sin? Can't he just pretend it's not there? Can't he just kind of wipe it away? Can't he just paint over the top of it? God knows how serious sin is. But he is a God of love. Sometimes people say that the Old Testament shows God as being more vengeful or judgmental. No. God is a God of love. From the beginning of creation, he always had this plan that involved the death of his son. And so just like Noah, we need to put worshipping God first. And we need to put obeying God first. And we need to put faith and trust in God first, even when we don't fully understand. There was so much that Noah could not have known. But he stepped out in faith, and he built that ark, and he stayed in that ark, and he built his altar, and he lived his life for the Lord, and he sinned and he stuffed up, but he was forgiven and cleansed because of his faith, and because of Jesus who came so many years later. And our job is to fill the earth with the knowledge of Jesus, and to fill the earth with the knowledge of that good news. So I invite the bands to come up, because I think after a reflection on Jesus through that lens of the bow in the sky, I think all we can do is to worship. Please stand.